Hello everyone, it's Theme Park Avenue, I'm Eric. Let me ask you a question. What is the best dark ride in the world? I'll give you a few seconds to make your decision and maybe comment it down below. Alright, if you answered anything except for The Amazing Adventures of Spider-Man at Islands of Adventure, congratulations, you're wrong. Alright, that's a little bit harsh, and the truth is that I have not really been on that many dark rides. I don't even really like dark rides in general. When a ride's focused on immersion and theming over thrills, which dark rides usually are, it takes a lot more to impress me. Then, even if a dark ride does impress me, it's even less common for me to have fun on it. I've been on very few dark rides that I would consider both impressive and entertaining. Some do fit that bill fairly well though. The new Monsters Unchained at Epic Universe comes to mind. It has brilliant animatronics, an impactful ride system, but still incorporates entertaining characters and fun dialogue. There's also Monster Mansion at Six Flags Over Georgia, with a large number of well-designed sets and animatronics, and they successfully convey both fun and spooky atmospheres. Also, there's a banger song. However, Spider-Man takes both immersion and entertainment to the next level. Opening in 1999, this ride has aged remarkably well, and is not only my favorite dark ride by a long shot, but also the one dark ride I think contends with the best roller coasters. So how does this one ride melt the icy heart of a dark ride hater? Let's talk about what makes Spider-Man the best dark ride I know. If there's anyone who's going to be underwhelmed by this ride, it's an animatronic fanatic. I know a lot of people ride dark rides just for the sake of seeing fluid and well-designed animatronics, and Spider-Man has none. It's more or less a motion simulator on wheels, and that's a death sentence for some theme park fans. I've seen the ride get written off as a screen ride, so let me explain why I think the screen focus doesn't hurt the ride at all. If you saw my Simpsons ride video, you know I'm not an unconditional detractor of screen-based rides. In fact, I can respect what they try to accomplish. The whole idea of screen rides is to make you, the rider, feel like you're part of what's happening in front of you on the screen. If the motions of your vehicle and the other effects match just right, you can feel like you're flying through Pandora, piloting the Millennium Falcon, or racing against Jimmy Fallon. Screen rides do not often work that well in this regard, primarily because the motion happening on the screen is so much more dynamic than the motion the guest actually experiences. If the motion did match, everyone would get sick. It's therefore not easy to make a screen ride feel very immersive. Even the all-new Harry Potter and the Battle of the Ministry at Epic Universe often fails to make you feel like you're actually there. The scene where the giant magical creature called the Rumpet launches you upward, it's not remotely convincing. Making screen rides good is a very challenging art, but when it works, it really works. I think that when utilized properly, screen rides can accomplish a level of immersion and action that physical sets cannot. The Spider-Man ride is the actual textbook example. Every moment in which the riders interact with a screen is perfect. You feel like you're in the action in a way no other screen ride has ever accomplished as far as I know. There are three key reasons for that. First, the revolutionary technique of squinching. Squinching was created for Spider-Man, and is the process of transforming 3D animation on a screen in order to synchronize it to the movements of a ride vehicle. For most motion simulators, the vehicle is held still in front of a single screen. Spider-Man is different since the ride moves along a track, so making each frame look perfect involves adjusting it for the position of the vehicle. This was the first ride to attempt this, and it works perfectly. The depth of the scene always looks just right, and the moments utilizing 3D glasses are convincing no matter where you sit. Of course, you know the scenes aren't actually real because they're animated, but the scenes are always believable for the second reason, the animation. Updated from film to digital projection in 2012 and fully reanimated, Spider-Man's visuals are spectacular. The colors are vibrant, the movements are expressive, and there's not a single moment that looks unnatural or uncanny. That's a trap most other screen-based rides like Harry Potter and the Escape from Gringotts fall into. The reason is simple: style. Harry Potter is trying to look realistic. The movies are meant to bring fantastical elements into our world, so the screens try to do the same. However, squinching is so difficult to make work on its own, so imagine how much harder it would be to do that with a human or a detailed CGI dragon. The first scene with Voldemort on Escape from Gringotts is a prime example. He looks triple his normal size when you're on the ride. It's ridiculous, and it takes you out of the immersion. On Spider-Man, the animation style is more simple and colorful, but therefore very consistent. Characters may look big when they get close to you, but it doesn't faze riders like myself because it's not trying to look real. It's trying to look like a comic book. It's perfect. This animation looks great. It's squinched flawlessly, and it will continue to hold up for decades to come. Comparing Gringotts to Spider-Man is, to me, like comparing Lion King 2019 to the original. The 2019 one tries to look real and hide imperfections with dark lighting, only getting worse with each passing year. The original Lion King's over 25 years old and still looks beautiful in nearly every frame, just like Spider-Man. By sacrificing realism, these screens are arguably the best looking on any theme park ride. Battle of the Ministry has higher quality screens, but I love looking at this great Spider-Man animation more than any other screen ride I've experienced. So what's the third reason this screen ride breaks the mold and works so well? Well, that takes us into... As great as the animation and squinching are in making this the most effective screen-based ride out there, this is only half of the puzzle. The other half is the ride system. To talk about this brilliant ride system and its mind-bending effects, I have invited Amusement Labs. Take it away.
If you don't know me, I run Amusement Labs, where I take you behind the scenes of how many of your favorite rides work. We travel all over the world to some of the most cutting-edge rides and break down the engineering and technology behind them. The ride system for the amazing adventures of Spider-Man is the first iteration of Universal's traveling motion platform, often called the Scoop Ride System, based on the storyline of the ride. Developed in partnership with Oceaneering, Universal patented and developed this all-electric motion platform by marrying high-speed and high-resolution electric linear actuators in the transport, a traveling base derived from simple pinch-wheel style dark ride systems. Outfitted with 6 linear actuators capable of quick motion and oscillation, these motion bases make up a high-strength, low-profile 6-degree of freedom motion platform based on a Stewart platform. Mounted between the platform and rider cabin is a slewing ring motor and integrated slip ring, providing power to the vehicle that allows for the rider cabin to limitlessly rotate 360 degrees. Up behind the rider cabin, a secondary computer manages the lap bar and door monitoring, along with audio cues throughout the ride vehicle's surround sound system. What Universal has done here is create a ride vehicle that is not only dynamic, but can focus the attention of riders to what is in front of them and above them, by blocking their peripheral vision. With this intentional limitation, Universal Creative is able to make set builds more concentrated in detail, which is why the ride system has been extremely versatile for other rides, like Transformers and Jurassic World Adventure. For more on that, see my Jurassic World Adventure How It Works video. Over the years, the Scoop ride system has received countless upgrades and modifications as the system was cloned to these other rides, but the functionality has remained pretty much the same as the original 1999 installation. Ultimately, the Scoop ride system brought in the motion-based ride genre that Universal is known for and allowed it to break free from a theater format into a family-friendly and yet high-thrill roving and immersive adventure. If you'd like to come explore more on how rides like these work in more detail, come check out my channel and Lightride's catalog of light-up ride models linked below. Now back to you, Eric.
So that sums up the technical aspects of the ride that I love, but I said at the start that I like dark rides to be both immersive and entertaining. So how does Spider-Man rise above all other dark rides besides the use of an anti-gravity cannon? Spider-Man's impressive technology throws riders into the action, but it's actually J. Jonah Jameson that truly throws riders into the story. To quickly summarize this ride's story, a team of villains called the Sinister Syndicate, led by Dr. Octopus, is stealing the Statue of Liberty with an anti-gravity cannon. The Syndicate uses that theft as leverage, trying to get New York City to surrender itself to the Syndicate. Pretty standard comic book villain story, but what does it have to do with the riders? Well, the Q is the office for the Daily Bugle, the newspaper that Spider-Man's alias Peter Parker works for. In a video displaying within the Q, we meet J. Jonah Jameson, Peter's boss, and find out that he is obsessed with getting the full scoop. However, all of the reporters have left the city due to it being destroyed and wanting to avoid harm. But that doesn't stop Jameson from getting his story, so he sends random citizens in the new Scoop vehicles to get information for the story. This setup is brilliant and surprisingly unique. Perhaps the most interesting thing about the setup is that the riders know what the conflict is before the ride begins. Outside of shooting dark rides, it's very common for story-driven rides to be centered around guests going to an event that just goes wrong. Epic Universe's Monsters Unchained and Battle of the Ministry both use that type of story. All well and good, but the issue is that while the action's interesting, there's no reason for the guests to be there. On Battle of the Ministry, we're going to a trial before the convict escapes, and we just kind of followed the action while the characters pretend we had any role. Monsters Unchained is identical, except they don't pretend that we're a part of the story. Victoria Frankenstein's just trying to get us out of there. That's not a flaw, but being part of the environment is definitely more engaging when you're also part of the action. Since the riders are voluntarily going into the Spider-Man action, the ride's automatically more interesting. However, that premise can only take you so far. The actual events of the ride have to make use of the fact that you're supposed to be there. Transformers the ride has you riding in a Transformer, directly partaking in certain key moments. And yet there are only 2 where it feels like you're really part of the story. Worse, those moments happen to be among the least effective in terms of technical immersion. As we've established, Spider-Man keeps you immersed, but it does so with great moments that directly impact the story. Let's talk through some prime examples by going through the whole ride experience. Right from the start, Spider-Man jumps onto your vehicle in a startling display of how the movement and screens blend. He explains that you're going to be in danger, trying to warn you to be careful essentially, because he as Peter Parker knew Jameson was sending out civilians in the scoop. Then, the scoop vehicle travels to the site where the villains are hiding. They directly attack you, not just because they're evil, but also because reporters busting into a secret hideout obviously threatens their hold on the leverage. It's fantastic. You feel like you're actually in danger and might be able to stop the syndicate. You're actively playing a role in the story instead of just being pushed along to the next scene. From that point on, the ride is about the villains trying to destroy you and Spider-Man is trying to fend off those foes. When you get sent into the air by the awesome aforementioned effect, Spider-Man tries to bring you back down with a web before getting grabbed by the Hobgoblin. Spider-Man keeps a grip on the web, and that's why you get pulled along with him. It makes sense. Then, one of the absolute best parts of the whole ride happens. Spider-Man gets caught, and Hobgoblin's ready to blow him up when our floating vehicle hits him from behind and he falls to near certain death. It's hilarious, convincing, and just about the best possible way to incorporate riders into the story. They don't take the spotlight from Spidey, but they still make you feel accomplished, and they provide entertainment and immersion in equally great measure. When you get to the ending scene where Spider-Man compliments you and thanks you for the help, it's actually warranted for the first time in dark ride history besides shooting dark rides. It's an engaging story that brings the rider right into the best of it in simple yet effective ways. That makes the ride entertaining, but not nearly as much as... My favorite thing about Spider-Man is actually not the brilliant immersion that engineering and mathematical geniuses spent years putting together. It's the jokes. This is by far the funniest theme park ride in history. Let's go through some humor of the ride. First off, the Q video. Much of the video is news reporting to fill the riders in as to what's going on, but Doc Ock and J. Jonah Jameson are comedic goldmines in the way they provide exposition. Doc Ock speaks in obnoxious monologues, insulting the viewers. Since he hijacked a TV channel, he says, "I apologize for interrupting your inane situation comedies and sophomore cartoon shows," in the most serious voice possible. When he explains what his plan and actions are, he uses eloquent and verbose vocabulary to make simple exposition more entertaining. That's magical, and it makes waiting in the queue more engaging and fun. As for Jameson, he proves to be a jerk, showing minimal concern for his employees who are in danger. Then he says we, the citizens, have to go out in the scoop to get, well, the scoop. To brush out the possible danger of the assignments, Jameson says a chip could drive it, like that kid there, which is such an out-of-pocket insult, but I love its inclusion. These animations are the perfect setup for the tone of the actual ride. Speaking of the actual ride, Jameson starts by talking to you upon realizing the criminals must be nearby, and then he says, "You know what trouble means? Headlines!" Then he commands, "So don't screw this up. Good luck." It's a simple but very funny start, establishing Jameson's one-track mind for the riders not familiar with the character, while providing a mean but effectively funny line said directly to us. Then we meet Spider-Man, who explains we're in danger and need to be careful. He ends by remarking, "Nice shades," in regards to our 3D glasses. This line gives in-universe significance to the glasses, providing a fun interaction with the masked hero, and just being fun. From this point on, the humor is mostly puns and one-liners, and they're all awesome. My favorites are as follows. Electro coming in and saying, "If you think you're getting out of here, you're in for a shock," before electrocuting you. Doc Ock says, "Don't leave now, things are just starting to heat up," before activating a flamethrower. As you fly through the air, Spider-Man yells, "You're not insured for this." Hydro Man says, "You're taking a dive," as he attacks you. Doc Ock yells, "Happy landings," when he reverses the anti-gravity ray on you. Spider-Man says, "Guess that wraps things up," after tying up all the villains in the web. A fun little detail is that an instrumental remix of the iconic Spider-Man theme plays as you return to the station. Every single joke and bit like that is witty, true to the spirit of the comics, and brilliantly voice acted. The great deliveries are no surprise, since some fantastic voice actors are brought on. Here's a few fun tidbits about the voice actors. Spider-Man is voiced by Chris Edgerly, who also voiced J. Jonah Jameson on the ride. That's fun and shows a solid range. But there are two voicing credits that most caught my eye. Hydro Man was voiced by Bill Fagerbach, the voice of Patrick Star in the cartoon SpongeBob SquarePants. Similarly, Dr. Octopus is voiced by Squidward Tentacles voice actor Roger Bumpus. Props to the whole cast. Thanks to them and the great writing, this is just a hilarious and fun experience. Let me put it this way. If you ride this with friends, you will have just as much fun on this if you're drunk or if you're sober. Not that I've ever gotten drunk at a theme park. This ride is just a blast the whole way through in the best possible way. It's very possible you're not convinced that this is the best dark ride. I shrugged off the lack of animatronics because I think the ride is funny, so you might be questioning my standards and priorities, and that's fine. But the way I see it, a ride being entertaining is more important than it being pretty. If I wanted to go to Disney World solely to look at pretty or cool things, I'd look at the Mickey Mouse pylon instead of entering the park for the price of admission. I think having impressive sets and technology is not enough on its own to make a ride great. The reason is, when I go to an amusement park, which is the all-encompassing term for theme parks, I want to be amused. I want to feel something. Looking at something cool might evoke an ooh and the occasional whoa. The sets and effects on Spider-Man can certainly do that sometimes. However, that doesn't really make me feel anything. I'm not having fun or being gripped by a story. Spider-Man is the exception as far as dark rides go, though. It is an easy-to-follow story that properly incorporates the riders, it blends screens and sets to sell illusions so rarely pulled off, and it gives you a fun time with wild motion and hilarious jokes, both of which I'd never get sick of. Ultimately, Spider-Man is a technological achievement for screen-based dark rides. It set the bar back in 1999 and is yet to be even touched 25 years later as far as I know. The people who designed and built the ride deserve so many accolades, and I'm happy the theme park community does give recognition to Spider-Man's technology. However, the writers and voice actors don't get nearly as much praise. They don't get recognized on dark rides in general, but the story is the heart and soul of any and all art, even dark rides. Therefore, I would like to extend my highest compliments and thanks to the people who brought the story, characters, and puns to life. Thank you to voice actors Chris Edgerly, Bill Fagerbach, Roger Bumpus, Pat Fraley, Candy Milo, Jim Wise, and Stan Lee. Also, thanks to the writers Ross Osterman, Scott D. Peterson, and Scott Trowbridge. Trowbridge also led the creative team that made this ride, and I will thank him for that too. But for possibly the first time in his career, I want to thank him for his overlooked but remarkable writing. The writing is above all else what I love about this ride, and if anything makes me realize how magical dark rides can be, it's the wildly entertaining and flawlessly executed comedy of the amazing adventures of Spider-Man. So that's all I have to say. Spider-Man is the undisputed best dark ride in the world as far as I'm concerned, but what do you think? Comment down below your thoughts and anything else you might know about the ride. Subscribe for more theme park videos. I'll see you next time.